You're listening to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast, episode number 200. Today I speak with Christian fantasy author, reader, and teacher Marie Elrich on how to find homeschool resources and clean Christian reading material. Welcome to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast, where we gain inspiration and motivation from others who share their touching stories of renewing hope and discovering purpose in any circumstance. I'm your host, Christina Reisinger, and today we will be encouraged by another tremendously inspirational topic that will embolden you to release fear, begin taking small steps forward, and move into your God-given purpose to live and serve in this life. Join me for today's story. Welcome back to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast. I am your host, Christina Reisinger, and today I am here with Marie Elrich. Hey, Marie, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am wonderful. So today we have another homeschool topic that we're going to explore. But first, I would love for you, Marie, to tell the audience something about you that might be interesting to even people in your own circle.
Yeah, most people don't know that I'm actually a quarter Japanese. So my grandmother is full Okinawan, and she actually became a Christian against her family's wishes, and met my grandfather on the Air Force Base in Okinawa. Was threatened by my own grandfather not to marry my grandfather. So it almost sounds like a dramatic romance story of, American and a Japanese post World War II and Vietnam War era, falling in love and getting married and having children in America. So I
Oh,
always like to tell people that something you don't look at, you look at me and you think, oh, she's not Japanese because I have curly hair. But actually, my curls come from my Japanese grandmother. We don't know how they happened, but they did. So,
that's great. And you're an author, right? You're correct. Is
yes,
that correct?
yes,
Do
I
you have any
am.
plans to write this story one day?
I've thought about it often, but it would require definitely a lot more time than I have right now, because I'd probably have to research and go to Okinawa and figure out exactly what locations they were at and meet my family there. I do have family and relatives in Okinawa who are still alive, but it definitely would require more than I can do right now. But it is always something in the back of my mind that I want to write this dramatic love story of how my grandparents
Oh,
came
yeah.
together.
Oh, it sounds great.
you
I'm
know.
excited for it when you bring it on. Um, can you tell the audience a little bit more about you? So we've established that you are an author. Can you tell them a little bit other, and then we'll jump into the topic.
Yeah, so like you said, I am a Christian fantasy author. I've written 3 books, 1 novella, and several short stories. I tend to do that mostly part-time since I am a full-time teacher. I teach at a homeschooling slash regular teaching, and most of you are probably familiar with it if you are someone who uses like a resource center or a part-time homeschooling model like a charter school. It's very similar. It's called the university model. So I work with a lot of homeschooling families, and but I am a full teacher. I usually teach a lot. So summertime is usually when I devote to my writing, and then traveling when I can and hang out with my husband. We've been married for 10 years. Don't have any children yet, but hopefully one day. But I've mainly focused on education during the day, and then whenever I have time, I will write and read books and just enjoy life.
Mm, that's very interesting. I loved writing as well. So we're here to talk about homeschool, and a huge question on everybody's mind when they first start, and probably every year after, is on the subject of resources. We talk about co-ops. We talk about things to get involved with. Today, you and I are going to speak more on the idea of resources and finding books and things that we can bring into our children's lives to enrich their learning process. So I'm going to just let you take it away and tell us, how do we find, as Christians, we tend to really monitor or want to monitor what our kids absorb. You look at this idea of reading and you say, oh, I want my kid to be an avid reader. And I love the fact that they're an avid reader. But is it the same as them sitting in front of the TV and absorbing all of that information one way or another? They have something coming to their mind. You want to make sure that the things that they are learning, the things that they are thinking are God-centric. So can you talk a little bit about how we can find some of these wonderful resources that we don't have to be concerned about, and why it's important to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. Television is a great entertainment tool. It's lots of fun for the kids and it's certainly engaging, but it does not engage your brain as much as reading does. Reading develops your critical thinking skills, makes you think, and helps develop your imagination. And studies have been shown multiple times of the benefits of reading part time and how well it develops your brain. So I don't know about you, but when I was younger, my mom was very much like, you can only watch a few hours of TV and mostly I want you to read. And so I always tell parents, develop that love of reading from early age, foster it in your child. Either by reading to them, which is what my parents did for a very long time, or discussing books together, reading books together, and enjoying them together. That always gives it more of a community aspect, and then helps your child think about what they're reading and what they're digesting. Even books that are not necessarily books that are Christian based, but you can have a discussion about. So, for example, the original Percy Jackson series, which is based on the Greek and Roman gods, that would be a very interesting discussion to have with your children. The first series is clean. The second one has a gay character in it. So it's not necessarily what most Christians would support. But you can have a deep discussion about things that are secular as long as you have kind of like a guide to those things and thinking about, okay, what is this book trying to say? What are good things about it? What are truths that we can take away from it? But also what are, and realize that it's a weakness or a flaw in the book and the philosophy that's presented there. So that's how I kind of always see it and approach it for books.
Mm-hmm.
Then, as far as resources to look up books, there's many different places you can go. There's tons of Christian bloggers out there. I mean, you can just Google like Christian book blogger, and you'll find some. The ones that I've really noticed that give a lot more in-depth recommendations and in-depth descriptions are Clean Fiction Magazine, Lore Haven Magazine, which is an online resource, and they have podcasts and book quests and things like that. Both of them kind of describe and rate books and let you know what to expect before picking them up. Books for Christian Girls, by Lindsay. She does a fantastic job of breaking down tons of books that are in different genres, of course, aimed at Christian girls. And I will say that has been a difficulty, is finding those for Christian boys. I think that there's not as many resources for that, unfortunately, because they must assume that, oh, only girls read, because generally speaking, the female population is the most avid readers. But I don't think that's the case, because there's too many teenage boys that I know that are avid readers and always looking for something to read. So
My 13-year-old
yeah, it's
son,
unfortunate.
my 13-year-old son is an avid reader, always has been. He will go to bed with a book, wake up with a book, eat every meal with a book. So yeah, there definitely needs to be enough material out there for boys.
Yeah, yeah. I think the only ones I've really seen try to do that would be like the Wing Feather Saga, Michael Vey, if you've heard of those books. And then I know that Alan Broken does a series that's for homeschooling families that appeals to both boys and girls. But those are the ones I've heard of that do more for Christian boys. Of course, there's like other series that I like and think Christian boys enjoy, but they're not necessarily written by Christians. So like the Percy Jackson one, Artemis Fowl, or like the Aragon Inheritance series or the Ranger's Apprentice. Those are all ones that I hear the Christian teen boys enjoying, but they're not necessarily written with a Christian worldview, which is why I was saying that having a discussion with
Mm-hmm.
your teenager about what they are reading is vital to helping them develop that discernment and be able to recognize it in whatever they're reading, whether it's written by a Christian or not.
Mm-hmm. What do you know? I'm trying to look at something right now. There is a series of books called Spirit Fighter or Son of Angels or something like that. It's based on, I don't know if you've heard of them. They're based on like angels and demons kind of things. Have you ever heard of that series?
I haven't. My biggest caution that I always have with angels and demons is how are they portrayed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes angels are portrayed as the ability to have like relationships with human beings and have romantic relationships with human beings. That's typically how I see a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that concerns me. That's not actually reality. Angels and demons are spiritual beings, so they not necessarily should be treated as having the ability to have romantic relationships, even if there was debate about the
Yeah.
Nephilim, which I'm sure many people have debates about.
Mm-hmm.
The other concern I would have would be how do they portray the angels and the demons? Because sometimes, depending on the series, you might have a portrayal of demons as the good guys and angels as the bad guys. And so, what I usually do for something like that is I go and investigate the author themselves. And so, it's like you can look at their biography and see, okay, do they say straight in their biography that they're a Christian, that they go to church, that they are involved with their church? Then you can look up kind of their denomination. And then, okay, let's say they are Mormon. Okay, well, Mormons believe something a little bit different than we do about angels and demons. So then that would be something to keep in mind. Because yes, Mormons have very clean books. I mean, they've written, I think Brandon Sanderson and Brent Weeks are Mormon. I'm not positive though. And both of them have written great fantasy series that I've heard about. But,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you have to take that in caution.
Right.
Just because, yes, they're clean, but they definitely have a different philosophy or a different worldview than maybe necessarily we do, like mainstream Christians. Even Catholics might, so it really depends. I believe that both Christians and Mormons can have a lot of things in common. And so compared to a secular author, I would trust a Mormon book over, over most secular books. But it's a good idea to keep that in mind whenever you're investigating, oh, is this something that my child should be reading?
Maria, do you know of any website where you can type in the title of a book and it'll populate all kind of reviews and any kind of Christian bloggers that come up with reviews on how these plots and storylines take place and are related to how we want to bring up our kids?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the ones I recommended, Lorehaven, Clean Fiction Magazine, have the ability to do that. They don't have all the books on there, but they have some. The other I would say too is Goodreads is actually a great resource, because they really break it down into reviews of, okay, this is what happened. And if you follow certain people that are Christian bloggers or Christian writers or reviewers, they will go through and break it down for each person. The other thing that is one you would probably not even realize is called Common Sense Media.
Yeah.
And also Plugged In. They both have book reviews. It just really depends on which book it is. So it's kind of hard because, especially if you're talking about a small independent author like myself, they may not have that review in there, because it's a smaller imprint. And a lot of these Christian authors are smaller and less well known. On the other hand, if it is a more well-known book, you'll get a lot more breakdown, especially on like Common Sense Media. I was actually really surprised how well I found so many books and also movies and films and shows broken down by how much content they have in them. So Plugged In does it, but I feel like Common Sense Media also has a lot more options as well, since Plugged In is mainly focused on movies and TV shows. So those are all resources that I would use too.
Okay. And I like the fact that you mentioned that, you can read to your kids. We love reading, and I even still, as the kids have gotten older, we still read aloud. We take turns reading aloud. It gives them an opportunity to hear how the words are supposed to be said and hear how everybody interprets it. And then the discussion as well. However, we're at a space where, and a lot of our homeschool friends are as well, where they're reading the novels and they're writing the papers on the novels. My son, especially, is someone who desires to be an author. So I want to flip the switch a second, and I want to talk about character development. So as an author, you have to, and a fantasy author at that, you probably are knee deep into character development. And there can be a lot of exciting characters in the secular world. If we can't deny that, if you're writing a Christian book, you and I have spoken about some things that happen in your books, you can't deny that, things happen. People are a certain way, and your antagonist may be someone who is into some things that maybe are not topics that your kids really are aware of too much. How can the writer come up with exciting characters and say, I'm still staying within this Christian space of trying to convey a great message to my fellow readers, or the readers that are going to come in to read my books? So do you understand what I'm trying to ask? I guess.
Yes. Yeah. I actually get this question a lot because I have my own writers group, a Christian writers group I run locally.
Okay.
And a lot of them, they're asking that same question. How do we portray the real world, so to speak, but also still do it in a way that honors God, and is not honoring the world and is not emphasizing the world? And it is a very hard question to answer and really describe, but I think the most important thing to do, in my opinion, is not to be afraid of portraying realism and the consequences for a sinful action. So one of my characters is a drunk who has many relationships with multiple women. He has multiple consequences to that action and what he has done. And he loses pretty much everything because of what he has done and the sin he has experienced. And the reason I did that was because I feel like a lot of our secular media today portrays it as, oh, you can get drunk and you can have multiple relationships and there's no consequences for that. There's no problems with that. You'll be fine. There's nothing wrong. And that's not true. That's not reality. And I feel like having that realistic part in it where even the Christian characters in my book struggle with relationships and trust. And when you have broken trust, how do you repair that trust? How do you forgive others? How do you trust God even when everything is going wrong? How do you endure suffering? Um, I think that is the way that you can create these compelling characters, is that you're trying to strive for a realistic wrestling of the faith, but also that you are not being explicit. Nowhere in my books will you find anything explicit. You won't find explicit relationship scenes. You won't find cussing. You won't find intense gore in my books. That's a way where I feel like you can portray things realistically without having those in it. You don't need those things. You can fade to black, so to speak, and still have a compelling story. And I think also that it's very important as a writer that we always involve God in our work, and we pray and ask God to give us guidance on our characters, on our writing process, on what we should be writing and how far we should go, so to speak. And I think that is of utmost importance to keep in mind. And because when we are honoring God, that's what matters the most.
Absolutely.
And, C.S. Lewis wrote the Screw Tape Letters, which is essentially a conversation between two demons, okay, about trying to corrupt the unnamed Christian character. And for most people on the outside, they would be like, oh my goodness, he wrote about two demons. Like, what? Why would you ever do that? But if you read his book, you realize that the reason he wrote it, and he even says so in the preface, is he wanted to show you the realities of spiritual warfare all around us that we don't always pay attention to. He wanted to show how the devil tries to deceive us and how he tries to lead us astray with worrying about things that we shouldn't be worrying about and thinking about things that we don't need to be thinking about. And that is why he wrote that book, even though for people looking on the outside in, they would be horrified by that idea. But I think he was led to write that so that other people could understand the truth and reality of what God has been trying to help us understand, which is we need to focus on him and honoring him and not focus on all these distractions and all the things that get us anxious and worried about life or depressed or down. So that's why I say write the story that God wants you to write, and keep in mind that you can portray things realistically without being graphic. And that's how characters are ultimately developed and gone through it. Now, as far as like craft, I can definitely give you books that I would recommend reading about character development, but that's just one part of it, one portion of the whole pie.
Right. Well, I love the fact that you said that you should pray over it. I have a friend right now who is writing her first book, and we had a conversation the other day, and she said, it's not even my words. She said, I've been given every time I sit down to write, I have given it to the Lord, and he has given me the words to write. And I said, that is amazing. I can't wait to read it. And, I have a couple under my belt as well. It's been a little while, but, all that time to sit down and everything. But the part where you were talking about the character development, I want to go back to that for just a second. Earlier on, when I asked you about the story about your grandparents, and you said that you might need to travel to be able to learn more and fulfill that research on that particular story. When our children have a desire to write at a young age and they have not yet experienced a lot, and hopefully some of these things they will never experience, how do they find themselves developing these characters with realism? Obviously we don't want them to have that explicit knowledge anyways, but so they don't want to portray that. But how would you suggest that they're able to get deep with a character in order to show its development throughout the storyline and make them relatable to the readers if they have not experienced these things?
So I have not experienced drunkenness. I've never been drunk. Um, I've never had multiple relationships. Okay. I actually am very blessed that I only dated my husband and married my husband. So your question is really interesting because I think there's this adage around the writer community of write what you know, and I don't think that's true. I think it's more write how you feel and how you experience life. All of us can relate to feeling broken and to feeling like we've messed up and we've had problems where things have not gone our way. And we thought that we knew what we wanted for our lives. And God is showing us, no, that's not the case. So I think, yes, there's something need to be said for research, especially if you're doing historical fiction, which is kind of what my Japanese American story would be. The most of the ideas of alcoholism and having multiple relationships came from more like statistical scientific studies than anything else. So like you can look up and see what are the effects of alcoholism in families? What are the effects of having multiple relationships? And that's not necessarily graphic. To me, it was almost scientific. Like, this is what happens. These are the effects. This is how this character feels, and then that way I could understand my character better without having to experience something as bad as that would be. Even like addictions are in there, and so to me, I guess it was kind of a psychological thing, is that I went and studied more of like the psychology of human beings and their behaviors when they fall into these negative behaviors, what happens, as well as the statistics and knowledge about broken families and broken homes and how that happens and how that comes to be. So yeah, I've never experienced those personally, but I was able to step in their shoes and see from their perspective because of what I learned through the study of psychology and human beings, but also just through personal relationships and what I have known through others, like experiencing betrayal and trust. That is something that unfortunately our world often has. And even I'm sure your children have had friendships break or had friendship struggles and had to wrestle with those. And those are things that they can use for their characters to become more understandable and empathetic. And of course, getting to know other people and their testimonies. I met a man who was a previous alcoholic, and I was able to talk to him about his journey and what his struggles were like. And he's a Christian. So, having those kind of discussions, you could go to your church, and I'm sure there's people in the church who have recovered from those things or experienced those things, and learning to listen to them and gain their wisdom for what they went through and how they have overcome those things and how they dealt with them. I think all of those are valuable resources of wisdom for your children and for you as an adult without having to go and experience something terrible, So that's the way in which I have gathered resources of information to develop my characters.
Mhm. And I wonder if children kind of draw from other books that they've read or movies that they've watched through those characters, because my son is writing a book. He'd probably be horrified if I I told everybody this, but I am. I won't divulge too many details, but to me, when he was writing it, it almost sounded like a Narnia type-esque C.S. Lewis stuff. And we had been reading a lot of the C.S. Lewis books, so I thought that was kind of interesting. So um, now reading, as far as when you go to your local library, do you need to have certain titles in hand before you go? Or do you just say, hey, look, and then we flip through and see? How would you suggest that trip?
So, I would suggest actually going online, doing research first, presenting those to your children, and then, I don't know if your library does this, but my library does holds.
Mhm.
So I can go onto the library database, look and see if it has it, and then put a hold on it, and then going and picking up the books. I mean, there's definitely something to be said for, you love the experience of looking through a library, right? And picking out books. And that's such a delight. But it's hard now in a society in which we can't trust what is labeled as being what is actually good. We know that there are many children's books out there that support an unbiblical lifestyle. Now there are young adult books that are being categorized as young adult, but have disgusting content. And I think that that can no longer be a safe place that you can just let your kid go free and pick whatever book they want. Even the Scholastic Book Fair
Mhm.
has many books in it that don't support Christian values or principles. So, I mean, there's some caution to be used if you do want them to have that experience. I think the main thing would be having your phone ready to go to Google it, and then having to try and explain to your child, hey, we can't have Polar Bear Has Two Mommies as a book that you're going to read. It doesn't support what we believe. Why don't
Mhm.
you go pick out this Polar Bear book? You know,
Right.
um, so it is more difficult, I think. I know there are some churches that have libraries,
Mhm.
and I hope that that becomes bigger and bigger, that these churches can become a resource center for a lot of families. I just feel like that would be wonderful if we could finally start developing Christian libraries again. When
Mhm.
I was a kid, our church had a library, and you could check out books from there and know that it was safe.
Right.
But I don't see that as much anymore, and I feel like that's really needs to be a thing again.
Right.
That we have more people doing that.
Mhm.
So, if you know people or can get together and kind of co-op it and have donations from different churches and start your own library, if anyone can do that, that would be wonderful, because then you could have and know and let your children have that experience of picking out their own book. Versus now, if you don't have that, you'd have to do the research yourself, present 5 or 6 options for your children, and put them on hold, because that's the safest way to make sure that that book is Christian or clean.
Mhm. You know, you were talking about earlier that there are not as many boys books, and we've established that, I'm focused on my 13-year-old boy, who his reading level is getting higher and higher. So as they get higher, I think it's more difficult to find something that is clean. Um, he likes to read these war, like actually not fiction, but nonfiction war novels. And he loves history, but I am terrified that if he's reading those, they're going to have the Lord's name in vain, because they say, expletives all over the place. And um, so I really would like to see more of that, more informational books that they can read, that you can't say, hey, well, we have to put, like you said, the explicit the words in there, because that's real, that's what they're going to be hearing out on the field, or that kind of thing. So um, I know we're talking about homeschool as well, but if a parent is listening to this and their kid is in um, public or private school, or even, I guess, even a co op, that they have been assigned a book and they have to read the book for their class, but they don't agree with that. Do you have any words for the parents? And is it just that discussion that you talked about earlier on in the show, or how would they handle that reading material that is required for their student?
I would say two things. See if your school district or your school has an alternative. So, first ask them, hey, I don't feel comfortable with my child reading whatever it might be. Is there an alternative assignment? I believe most schools across the country are required to offer alternative assignments when there is a book or a resource or a class
Okay.
that they are not comfortable with. If it is, especially with the teenagers who tend to be like, well, I don't want to be the only one in class alone or isolated or, from my other peers, which is what you often hear from teenagers. So they're like, Mom, don't make a big deal out of it. It's not that big of a deal. Well, in that case, I think it's more what I was talking about, the discussion route of, okay, let's read this book together. Let's discuss what it says. And I think the biggest one for that, especially with teenagers, is helping them see the conclusion that you already know.
Mm-hmm.
So helping them see that and asking the question of, okay, what is this book trying to say? Does that agree with what we know from the Bible? Okay, why do you think I am concerned? You know, Helping the teenagers realize for themselves, oh, this is why mom doesn't want this in my knowledge banks. This is why she doesn't want it here. And having those discussions, because as teenagers, they kind of have this attitude of, Mom, stop protecting me. You're so,
Yeah.
they kind of have that, I want to become more independent. You don't have to watch over everything I do. Well, it's like, okay, I get that. But could we read this together and have a discussion about what it's trying to say? And then that way you and I can have a better understanding, because when it's done together, instead of this kind of like mom saying no to this, it becomes something that they start investigating and start realizing on their own.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, when I was younger, we always used to joke that she ruined movies for us. And part of our joke is because we watch a movie, Kung Fu Panda. Love that movie. It's such a funny movie, right? Well, you watch the movie, and my mom would go, what do you think that the turtle is trying to say? Because he's like one with the universe and
Okay.
disappears into the petals. And my mom would be like, why do you think they have that? What do you think that's coming from? And we'd be like, Mom, seriously? And it helped us think, though. It helped us realize, oh, they're trying to promote Eastern pantheism that believes that you become one with the universe when you die, you know, and that's not a Christian principle.
Mm-hmm.
And so it started with taking something as simple as Kung Fu Panda and taking those movies and books and just saying, okay, what do you think they're trying to say about the tortoise disappearing into a whole bunch of petals?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's essentially saying that when you die, you become one with the universe. Is that what Christians believe? Well, no. Okay, why do you think they included it in that? And that kind of discussion made it so that by the time we were getting older, we always joked even as adults and say, well, now we can't watch a movie without going through those questions, the
Right.
questions mom always made us think about of
Right.
what is that? Why is that in there? That doesn't sound biblical, that kind of thing. But it gives us discernment, right? And that was
Right.
something we did as teenagers.
Well,
So, yeah.
I don't know about you, but I noticed that with we're talking about reading material here, but if we're going to segue over to the movie lane, I noticed that older that what I became, that I was convicted more, and I think that also came with having children. I talk to a lot of parents right now who say, "Hey, I never looked at that movie the way that I do now when I was younger because I didn't even remember this being in it." It's something that you really hone in on when you become a parent or you become an older adult. Um, I want to kind of wrap this up with what I believe is the ultimate reading source that we should all have in our home. And as Christian parents, I'm sure that most everybody does have a Bible-centric reading material. Whether you're reading the Bible every day as a family, get it out and just take turns reading. We've done that. Whether you have a Bible curriculum in your home, that's kind of where we are now. As you get older and curriculum becomes more difficult, sometimes things drop by the wayside, but we're trying to teach our children to pick up their own Bibles. So one of the things that I told you earlier about my 13-year-old, he's always has a book in hand while he's reading the Bible now. Actually, he's got this action Bible, so it's more like a graphic novel, but he reads both. But apparently this has become very interesting to him, so he's constantly got it going. But do you have any methods or suggestions of how families can incorporate the scripture? Do they just sit down and open their Bibles? Do they read from cover to cover? Do they let it open where it falls? Discussion, curriculum, go ahead.
Yeah. So I love Bible Study Fellowship. I've been a part of Bible Study Fellowship for 8 years now. It is a family-centric Bible study. Men and women and children all study the same passage or book of the Bible together. And it's leveled, of course, by understanding. When we're talking about your teenage boy, his questions would look a lot more like yours. And so then it would be more of a familial discussion where you can talk about the book and the verses themselves using those questions. If you don't have a BSF in your area and you're not able to join that, or maybe something's going on and there's conflicts in terms of nights to visit, I would suggest doing this method where you look at the passage of whatever you're trying to read. And you look at it and you first go, okay, what is it saying? What's the basic summary of what it's trying to say? What is it telling us about God? So there's usually a principle about God that we can learn from that section of scripture. Even the long genealogies, you can learn something about God. God knows each of our names. That's what you learn from the long genealogies in the Old Testament. Then you can see if it makes the connections to other parts of scripture. So, going back to the genealogy thing, you have that idea in, especially in Matthew, where it gives Jesus's genealogy, where you go, oh, this is Bathsheba. Well, what's the story of Bathsheba? Or this is Tamar. What's the story of Tamar? Those ones are a little bit more mature, obviously, but they are things that you can look at and make connections to. And then, of course, you can ask the question finally at the end of, okay, what principle is God trying to teach me through the scripture that can then apply to my own life? So it's kind of like a 5 or 4 question method where you just ask those questions and you go through each one. I always recommend, if you're able to, start at the beginning in Genesis and go all the way through the Bible, because honestly, when I've read through the whole Bible once, and I'm trying to get through it again a second time. But when you've read through the entire Bible, it gives you a bigger perspective of how God is working and how he worked from the very beginning until now. So especially as they get older, that would be the goal, is to start in Genesis and work your way through even, the big laws, and talk about, even with the laws, why did God make this law? What's so important about this law? We know a lot now, like, for example, most people know that Jewish people aren't allowed to eat pigs. Well, we know now from science that the way pigs are kept, if they're not kept a certain way, that people can get sick from them. And so God was trying to prevent his people from getting sick. And that's why he prevented them from eating pigs. And so it's kind of things like that you learn over time, that are still principles that you find in your life, just from a little passage of scripture. And making that time each day to do that as a family, or once a week as a family, I think is very important.
That is my absolute favorite time with my kids, when we sit down and we read. And, we were in a space where we did it every day. We have not been so much that lately because life happens, but they still read on their own, and I still read. But they would read. We would all have our own Bibles, and we would take turns reading. We would read our versions and discuss the differences. Then sometimes my kids would draw. So they draw these little stick figure people, and they would draw the scene out if I would read it out loud. So it's a lot of fun. You can make, things happen that are a lot of fun that way. But yeah, I'd be willing to bet that every Christian parent is emphasizing the reading of scripture as well. So Marie, thank you so much for being a guest on Faith Breathed Hope. Can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. You can find me on my website, which is mhelrich.com, which is mhelrich.com. If you go to mhelrich.com/newsletter, I will send you a free short story collection, and you'll be able to get a sample of my books and writing. Most of my stories are appropriate for older teens. So those books are usually good for them. And then I do have on my website and blog a few lists of books that I recommend in the Christian fantasy genre. And you can look at those, but I am not a one-stop-all resource like the ones I mentioned before, but that's mainly where you can find me online.
Okay, thank you so much. And we'll try to link up maybe the other ones that you mentioned in the show notes so that people can get to those quite easily. So thank you again for being on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation, and look forward to reading your work as well.
You're welcome.
And for those of you out there, continue to be blessed and bless others, and I'll see you next time. Thanks. And I want to thank you for joining us on Faith Breathed Hope, where you gain inspiration and motivation to renew hope and discover purpose in any circumstance. Please like and share this podcast and give us a review on iTunes. Be blessed.